Hello, and welcome to today's session. As always, I'm your host, Kevin Grote, Staff Engineer and Technical Partner Manager here at VMware. Today, we're going to be talking about user management, both identities and environments. In the past quarter, VMware has come up with some fantastic announcements surrounding the way that we manage users, environments, and identities. But I've gotten a lot of questions since both of these products touch on a very new facet of the end user compute experience. So I thought what we'd do today is start off with a quick whiteboard explaining how these products snap into the broader picture, where they fit inside of what we already know, and then take a look a little deeper into each product to see what type of functionality they provide and how they fit together. So with that, let's start with a quick whiteboard. We're familiar with the core concepts of the enterprise, and you guys have probably seen me draw this out a few times. We have our on-premise data center here, and then on this side we have our off-premise or cloud resources. Between these, and in no small way, are our user environments. And our user environments are really responsible for driving the core of what we do. So we come up with some interesting conundrums when we look at this. We have the resources that users are accessing. It could be terminals, or even the bring your own device, the laptops, Chromebooks, MacBooks, anything else that they're bringing into the environment. Or it could even be mobile devices. All of these things require a consistent experience to be delivered to them. And this is where User Environment Manager really kicks in and becomes an integral part of the story. User Environment Manager is all about what the user is being delivered. So if we think about it, we're managing the environment, and then we're also managing what exists at the highest level in the user's identity. So inside of the user's environment, we're managing things like applications, we're managing settings, we're managing components and points of interaction, and these need to be consistent across all of these different device platforms as the user proceeds through their day. Now, the user isn't necessarily just someone inside the company, it could also be a consumer. So we have to apply User Environment Manager to allow us to scale what users are experiencing. I like to think that UEM, that the E is interchangeable, that it could be either User Environment Manager or User Experience Manager. Either way, whether we're taking it from the standpoint of the user, where it's all about experience, or whether we're taking it from the standpoint of IT, where it's all about environment, we're still talking about the same thing. Now, when we're looking at these points of access, we have to ask questions about how people are authenticating, how they're being authorized into this resource set. This is where the conversation shifts and we start talking about Identity Manager. So Identity Manager effectively is going to live up here inside of this space. Identity Manager gives us the ability to interact with existing authentication stores, things like maybe Active Directory or other single sign-on authentication platforms that you might have in place. And Identity Manager then gives us that point of interaction so that all users are having to do is they're having to simply authenticate using the platforms that are available inside of their devices. Great example might be mobile device, just using their thumbprint to authenticate. Another example is going to be replacing the domain credentials that they would have to know, so that we remove that single point of failure where the user forgets their password, they misplace it, they have to change it. Now we're allowing users to access resources ubiquitously, and we're allowing IT to maintain scale and security. So if we see here, both of these platforms integrate together pretty seamlessly. And in addition, both of these platforms also allow for cloud integration, so that we're accessing all of our applications in a seamless and predictable and scalable way. So that our user environment, we're accessing virtual, standard resources, even cloud-based resources, and that Identity Manager is capable of allowing us to scale both on-premise, off-premise. Thus, one more time, underlining VMware's core vision of providing one cloud with any application across any device. So now let's double click into each one of these products so that you can learn a little bit more about how they function together. So when we're talking about user, environment, and experience management and identity management inside of end user computing, we're really telling a story. We're telling a story about the migration from the client server era into the mobile cloud era. And one of the key components of this story is managing users. And you see, we end up managing all sorts of users inside of these environments, not the least of which includes IT. And so if we look at how we're managing the different types of users that we have in each one of these environments, we have our IT professionals, we have business owners, and we also have end users, all with unique sets of requirements. And they have to be able to scale. Scale is critical when we're talking about cloud readiness, the new age of end user computing, because it's no longer enough just to be able to provide scale for 1, 10, even 100 users. We have to be able to scale hundreds, thousands, even tens of thousands of users. And we have to be able to do so consistently, providing them a consistent experience as they go. So how do we do that? What functionality does User Environment Manager bring into the table? Well, let's start with the concept of dynamic configuration. Central to this is the idea of being able to apply settings based upon conditions. And these conditions can exist based upon IP address ranges, can be based upon location, could be based upon points of user access, basically anything that would align with the user accessing a specific resource. Then we can group multiple conditions into a condition set. And then that condition set can be applied based upon specific tags, or even based upon other parameters and conditions that are met. Once this is all built, we can then reevaluate these conditions within a session and trigger changes as it proceeds. So users are getting a seamless, ubiquitous experience and clear access to all of their resources as they move through their day. So now, if we look at application configuration, we're talking about the idea to take one package, configure it tons of different ways, and to be able to customize these applications as the application's launching, so we don't have to customize it beforehand. To be able to then deploy across both virtual and native applications. Native applications being those that might install locally inside of that desktop. And then to deploy this across multiple environments, be it physical, virtual, or cloud. And then to be able to migrate these application settings between application versions to ensure whether you're talking about development environments, marketing, finance, executive environments, that regardless of what they're doing with their applications and how those applications are migrating and versioning up, that everything is interacting seamlessly. So what can we do inside of the scope of personalization with User Environment Manager? Things like files, folders, application settings, Explorer settings. All of these are within the scope very clearly for User Environment Manager. And then we can also apply dynamic policy across locations. Think of geographic-based policies that would impact things like printers, network mappings, application settings as users are moving from virtual to physical to cloud-based desktops. Users require consistent, personalized access as they move across devices. To be able to access the resources they need when they need them, configured the way that they need, and to have those changes persist as they move from physical to virtual to cloud-based desktop and back again. So what do you need to get started when we're talking about infrastructure for User Environment Manager? Well, it's really not as complex as one would think. We've got a requirement for Active Directory. We need that in order to ensure that we have group policy configuration for the client. Then we need a central configuration share where all of the configuration files for User Environment Manager are going to be located. And then there's a profile archive or user share that's going to be the location for all of the user's personalization files. And then lastly, folder redirection, which is entirely optional because that's going to maybe already be in place inside of the environment or be something we can implement to redirect user data to a file store of our choosing. So now when we talk not only about user environment management, but about identity management, we're talking about the way users are accessing these resources, how they're authenticating, and how we're providing a consistent experience that the user is interacting with. You see, while users want to be able to access what they want when they want, IT needs to be able to do this and provide them with an experience that is consistent with the way that they work and live, but still wrapping that inside of enterprise scale, ensuring security, scalability, repeatability, and aligning with the SLAs for the line of business. For a long time, users have lived in a world where they had to memorize tons of different passwords, had multiple points of access, multiple points of authentication for all of their different resources. We're now looking at an environment where we can take those multiple keys, combine them into one single point of authentication, and through cloud integration, use this single point of authentication to allow unparalleled access to both managed and unmanaged devices, services, and applications, whether they're traditional, SaaS, physical, virtual, or cloud. We do this by integrating Identity Manager. An Identity Manager can integrate directly in with your existing Active Directory resources to provide conditional access policies and also to integrate with any device restrictions, analytics, and also web catalogs that you have in place so that what users are accessing is seamless and they're also accessing what they need when they need it. When we talk about catalog access, we're telling a story about how we're allowing users to gain access to SaaS-based applications, traditional applications, and even SAML-based applications. And we're doing all of this and providing them a single point of access that they're able to authenticate against and be able to move seamlessly throughout their workday across all of their devices. All of this allows us to drive a whole new mindset and approach when we talk about mobile security and identity management. And inside of this mindset and approach, we're no longer just concerned with allowing some people access to some resources, but allowing everyone the access they need, when they need it, how they need it, and why they need it to the resources that they need to access it on. This allows us to think much bigger than we ever did before. To be able to provide things like adaptive access policies, where we may have an L1 policy that provides unrestricted access to applications across all the devices that they're accessing them on. And then to have more stringent policies that allow management for specific applications. A great case study for this might be to provide simple L1 access for something like Concur, where we want users to be able to access expense and travel information across any device they need. But perhaps more secured access for things like Outlook and CRM. Because at that point, we can then ensure that information isn't being migrated from sensitive corporate applications out into other applications that exist on their devices. When we look at how user environment management and identity management snap into the bigger picture of end user computing, we're seeing that we're not just talking about decoupling and abstracting and providing scale inside of the data center. We're not just talking about providing scale and flexibility inside of the operating system and the applications, but we're talking about providing scale, elasticity, flexibility, and scale in the way users are accessing these applications. I want to thank you as always for taking time to join me today. I hope you found value in this session, and I look forward to talking to you again really soon.